Session today is recorded so that we can pass this around to everyone who's unable to make it. The intent behind these sessions is that most of our customers end up asking us just questions that maybe aren't the most technical versions of what we typically see Center producing, but how the products get used and maybe best practices to get the most out of the technology that we sell to our clients. 365 being the most popular and consistent or common product. We want to go through the features of the different products and make sure that we're all using them to their fullest. So with that, today, I'm James Schuler, your host, Director of Business Development for Center Technologies. Joining me today is our CTO, Todd Smith. Todd, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, James. Glad to be here.
Internally at Center, Todd is well known for being the master of just about all of Center's tools. Specifically, though, things that deal with the communication aspect. Teams has become really the center of all of our communications. I feel like, Todd, has it been that way since Teams came out, or when did Teams really take over within Center?
Yeah, so we're always finding different ways to use our tools and communicate better. But Teams took off mainly during COVID. We had some people using it and adopting it prior to COVID, but when everyone went to work from home, it immediately went to Teams was that way to communicate, the way people were calling, the way people were meeting. So we used all these other different tools to do meetings prior to COVID happening. But after that, it just seemed like everyone adopted Teams because of how easy it was to use.
You saw kind of a divide, almost became a religion. People either wanted to be on Zoom or they wanted to be on Teams, right? There wasn't much of anyone who thought both tools were great. Everyone thought one was better than the other. Are we still seeing a lot of that? Is Zoom even pushing the envelope at this point?
Yeah, I just don't see as many features or enhancements as I am with Teams.
Right.
Zoom is pretty much their niche on meetings, and that's it. Whereas Teams is much more powerful than just meetings or just chat. It improves collaboration, communication across the board, helps reduce email clutter. So I think more and more people are wanting to do everything in Teams, not just meetings, but they're wanting to use Teams for calling. They want that to be their tool for communication.
Right. So the communication platform.
More and more people move to Teams away from Zoom and WebEx and all the other products.
Right. Makes sense. So you've often told me that maybe the most productive tool, but also the biggest distraction can be Teams. Tell me more about what does the productivity side of that really mean?
It can be very distracting if you let it. There's ways to customize your notifications so that you can see what you need to see and only be alerted on the things you want to be alerted on. So that's one thing that's important, because once you have a large company and a bunch of different teams and chats and groups, it can be very distracting how frequently you're getting notifications. So one thing I always recommend is to tweak those notifications, and I can try to go through some of that today.
Okay. Well, that'd be really helpful, actually. Todd Sweeney talked yesterday about Outlook and how you can remove those same pop-ups and distractions. So that when you go to your email, it's intentional time that you're spending in there as opposed to starting a task and then getting pulled away from it. So I think that would be good to show that side of it. Anything else on the productivity side?
Well, James, I'm always looking to be productive at Center and with my job, but not everybody can clone themselves, but always looking to be more productive. And so the goal today is to show you guys how to best utilize Teams and to its full extent, maybe show you some features you may not have been aware of and help you be more productive within Teams.
Well, I tasked you with something a bit challenging without giving you a whole bunch of guidance. I essentially said, if you were walking the floor of either our office or one of our clients' offices and you were to get grabbed by someone who's not on the IT team, what do you think they would be asking you? Or better yet, if you watch them work, what mistakes or things would you say are not the best way to leverage Teams? And what would you recommend they do? So with that, you said you prepared a small list, right?
Let me share my screen and I can get started on that and kind of walk through Teams in some areas that some features you may not be aware of or some ways to better utilize it. So I'm not going to PowerPoint everybody to death, but so the easiest way to dive in is to pull it up. So I have a demo environment here, so I can actually show some content, what it looks like. So if you're not familiar with Teams, On the left is where you do most of your navigation. One thing that I try to do, let's say I'm in meetings all day or come out of the office, come in, I try to look at my activity feed. This can also be overwhelming to where you can filter it. One thing I do is I'll look at mentions. So one thing you can do on Teams, let's say there's a channel and you want to get somebody's attention, you can at their name and mention them. And so that way I could look and say, oh, hey, let me look, this person mentioned my name. Let me focus on this as an action item, because otherwise there's a lot of other conversations happening. So you can filter by that. Anything on read, anytime somebody replied to a post. So this is where you can focus, where you need to focus on what you might have missed. So that's one thing that's helpful. Otherwise, this is everything that when you have your notifications enabled, this is everything you'll get notified on.
Yeah, that was definitely my world. I think I've shared this with you before, but I never went into that activity tab only because when I went in there, it's just an overwhelming list of everything. There's no organization. And the moment you showed me those filters, though, it became a whole lot easier to leverage and get use out of that tab there.
Yeah, absolutely. So chat can be used in several ways. You can have a just one-on-one chat with somebody where James, on your demo account, I didn't have a picture readily available, so
I was seeing that. Yeah, I look good there.
you look pretty good there. So, but you can share files, and not only when you share files, you can go back and look at those files. You can actually collaborate on them in real time within Teams. Pop them out, open them in your web browser, use the local PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and actually actively work on the same document at the same time. Be able to reference it later. So let's say we share files, anything we listed here. The same thing applies for the actual Teams versus the chat. What's also useful is the organization. So an org chart, so you can see, let's as organizations get bigger and someone messages you, you may not be aware of who they are and what department they report to or who they report to. So you can look at your org chart, see where they are in there. And then another useful thing is activity. So anything that you and that person could also see, any channel or team that you're both subscribed to, you can see where they've posted. If you know they might have posted something in one of those other channels, you can go find it there. If you have LinkedIn integration set up, it'll actually pull up their LinkedIn information as well. Group chat is very helpful.
Real quick, Todd, in that organization tab, you now can replace your directory practices essentially. Like we don't have to keep a log of a directory in a file that people can go look for to find a cell phone number. Instead, the organization and hierarchy of the management structure plus the contact info is all in one place now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You still have to maintain it on the back end as far as the reporting structure, the departments. So within Azure Active Directory,
there you go.
Or on-prem Active Directory syncing with your Azure AD, you still have to maintain that, but it helps dynamically build this org chart. So again, we're a company that's dealing with a lot of growth. We were having to always maintain our org chart. It was very difficult. Whereas this, a lot of people use this more than anything we ever posted, any org chart we ever posted on SharePoint or anything.
And I know this is available on my cell phone through the Teams app as well, which I find extremely helpful. That now, like if I needed to call, like James Schuler's contact info is there. So if I need to call her, I can just click that phone icon and it'll immediately make that call on my behalf, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you call someone, the default, so that is one important thing to note. The default is it's going to call them on Teams. So if they have a Teams app or a Teams license, which is included with the majority of Microsoft 365 plans that include a mailbox, it's going to place a call on the app. Never leaves the Teams environment. So that's one thing that's very helpful. If you have the app on your cell phone, it's going to call you like it's a call on your phone app. And then if you have a calling plan, so that Teams voice with a calling plan, that would allow you to use Teams to make outbound calls outside of the Teams world and receive calls outside of the Teams world. But without that, you might have an organization where most of your calls are internal. You might not need that license for everyone. You might only need that for a handful of users and not have to get a full-blown Teams voice license for everyone and still utilize Teams to make phone calls internally. If let's say they're not available there and they have a cell phone and you have the Teams calling plan, you can select the number to dial, and it would dial that. Otherwise, you could copy it and view their cell phone number, dial it from your cell phone or another way. You can
And
also send them an email from here, so it just makes it a lot easier to find somebody and communicate with them.
Todd, you were just mentioning how that syncs, and Ann put a comment in the chat asking a question about the organization structure administered through Active Directory. You were saying that is where that happens, correct?
Correct. So if you have a local traditional Active Directory environment, you're using Azure AD Connect to sync all of your users and single sign-on between your local Active Directory and Microsoft 365. Let's say on the organization tab, you select a manager on who they report to. Teams and Azure AD are pulling that information in and dynamically building this. So as long as you have your Active Directory objects with data, it will populate all of this for you.
It's so important that that's
have, yeah, if you don't have on-prem Active Directory, you would do all this within Azure AD directly.
Let's keep moving. I don't want to run out of time with just talking about organization. So you're about to get in the group chat, I think.
Yeah, group chat, very helpful. What we typically try to use group chat for is something timely, where it's constant communication, more conversational driven, whereas Teams is more like forum based and long-term collaboration where you're posting files, you're posting reporting.
Yep. You're using too many terms for me. Let's go back. You just said that Teams is used for forums.
Well, but you're actually similar to like a forum type of conversation where people are posting and then there's replies happening underneath.
This is constantly to a point of confusion for everyone that I talk to Teams about. You're not referring to Teams the product. You're talking about Teams, that tab on the left.
Correct. Teams within Teams. Got Teams on Teams on Teams.
So if you were going to get together on the lingo, there's chat, there's channel, there's Teams, all within Teams.
Yep. And then there's group chat. So I can add someone. Let's say we're having a conversation, hey, it'd be a lot better if I could bring Todd Swaney in this. What's pretty helpful is I can look them up. I can add them to that conversation. Well, normally to the conversation.
Right.
But I can build a new chat. What's also helpful is I can go and rename it and call it something, Project 1.
Okay.
So now, and another useful thing I can do is pin it so that it's once you have a bunch of conversations, it's going to fill up quickly. I can pin it so I can access it fast. And I can also pop that chat out so that I'm not getting lost in the navigation of Teams. I can keep that down here to reply to it quickly.
So I know one use case that I have that I love it for is that our sales team and our services team come together on active projects by putting together a group chat for what's about to start as it's implemented and then post-project support. Then once that project is completed, there's no more chatter. It just falls away. It just goes, it disappears from our view and it's gone then. Yep. But when you have a Teams, which is the other tab, you mentioned forum style, that's usually more department structured, right? Or how would you recommend that be done?
Yeah, one important thing to note, you can also hide or mute. Added to it, you want to be in the loop on it, but you don't want to be notified every time someone's posting. You have the ability, like a lost video there.
Yeah, you kind of went away for a minute. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Well, I can hear you. Now your video's back.
Yeah. All right.
We just had someone new join. Obviously, that must have been the issue. We'll blame them.
That's fine. I get blamed for everything anyway.
So one thing that you can do, pop out chat. You can unpin it. You can hide it so that it doesn't get lost in the list. But yeah, so then we have Teams. So this is where there's a lot more features within here. And Microsoft's always building on Teams in general. They've added over 450 features just within the past year, according to Microsoft. So they're always building and making it a better product. So this is where I'm talking about. It's more of forum style. So someone will post. You could reply to it. What's also helpful is by default, if I start a new conversation, this is where I can mention somebody in there. they'll get notified, but then let's say that someone replies to this thread that Tamara posted, she'll get notified that they replied to it by default. So pretty helpful. Once they add a file, it also goes up here to files, so it doesn't get lost. You don't have to go find it later in the thread. When it comes to files, this is where you're going to see everything. You can edit it straight from here. This is where I'm saying you can pop it out as well. Open in SharePoint. Copy a link.
Touch on that
share it
real
with
quick,
somebody.
Todd.
What's that?
Tomorrow we're actually doing, so yesterday was Outlook, today's Teams, tomorrow is SharePoint.
Yeah.
SharePoint is kind of the repository for Microsoft for all different types of things they do, like OneDrive, Teams, anything with files attached to it is all back-ended by SharePoint, right?
Correct. And so that's another thing to note is when you're going to be utilizing SharePoint, Teams is very helpful. You can tie the two together to where this HR leadership team could be a SharePoint site. So all the files that are here are also within that SharePoint site. You can have a little wiki page, Excel documents. So these are tabs. A lot of people don't utilize these. They're very helpful. It's almost like a shortcut to a document.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, this IT team, they're doing a deployment. They might have troubleshooting steps and a PowerPoint that everybody could view. They want to have device inventory that they're updating on the fly instead of going and finding it. It's just a quick way to remember how to get something. Oh, hey, we're doing a deployment. Let's pin that deployment document there. You can do virtual whiteboards. You can do those in meetings. Create forms. Do a task, which uses Planner, which is awesome. You can assign each other's tasks and in real time update those assignments and move them to different statuses. You can have a shared OneNote that's pinned there also, lists. You can go on and on. There's a ton that you can do here. Add a URL to a website. So we have a lot of tools here at Center. We have a channel that's for internal tools, for example, where people post asking questions and need help. I have all of the shortcuts for the tools across the top there to me where people can get to them a lot faster as well.
They haven't integrated Microsoft Project into this yet, have they?
It's a great question.
Because we could be pulling tasks and things from there.
No, it doesn't look like they have. That's kind of surprising.
Oh,
no, they have right here.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I just missed it then.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So let's say you already have a project, you can pull it in and see in real time the status of it. So
cool.
If their app doesn't exist today, it might in the future. What's also helpful is you can book meetings and let's say we're collaborating, whether it's on a channel, whether it's on a group, you could set up a meeting right now that invites everybody and you could actively all jump in. Let's say we're chatting about an issue. Well, I could just book a meeting. Everybody could jump in and look at it straight from within here instead of going to my calendar, sending out an invite or anything like that. Another thing that's pretty helpful, Outlook and Teams work really well together. Let's say I have this really important riveting email, test email, and I want to share it. I can click share to Teams. And I can say where I want to share it to. And it would post that email as an attachment and HTML doc to where somebody could view it. I could chat with the person that sent me an email, schedule a meeting with them. So they work very well together. But the teams within teams, you have teams for teams within teams. So one thing we recommend is, let's say it's a department. Typically we create a team per department or a team per committee. Just to make that collaboration easier. And then you have channels within there. By default, you get a general channel. We try to create a channel for the different topics that team might be involved in so that those conversations around those topics can go in there. So it makes it a lot easier to find that information in the future.
You probably overdo it though, huh, Todd? Have we seen that before?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people overdo it. And one thing that by default, one thing I don't like is that Microsoft gives everyone the ability to create a team by default. And what we saw when we started using this within Center was team sprawl. We had 2 managers create teams for the exact same department. You end up with a laundry list of teams. So one of the first things we did when we saw that was there's PowerShell scripts you can run to remove that access and have a limited group of users that can create those groups or teams. So very helpful to do that. We can help you with that, but it's easy to find that PowerShell command to run to limit that access. You can also create private channels within the teams.
Mhm.
I can add a channel. So let's say by default, anyone that's invited to a team can view every channel. But let's say I have a HR management or IT management. I don't want to create a whole new team for it, but I just have some stuff I want to keep to a limited audience. I could create a new channel, make it private, and only invite some sub list of members of that to that channel. Also very helpful. Yeah, so pins across the top, shortcuts, guidance, quick references to documents, some other cool tools, because I know we only got about 9 minutes left, and some new features. There's so much to Teams. I'm navigating a lot. One thing I didn't realize, and at one point in time I did, but if you mouse over the back button, it'll show you the last about 12 items or areas that you navigated to where you can easily navigate back versus clicking back, going and navigating through all these different channels. So I can go back to one of those, say the wiki here, and then I could do the same thing to go forward if I needed to for any reason. So another thing is there's shortcuts. So if you click the little slash, there's a bunch of slash commands that you could run to quickly pull up and navigate to that versus, again, a bunch of mouse clicks. All you have to do is hit slash, and then it shows you the different options you have. Or you can type those out. Let's see, bookmarking messages is also helpful. Again, a lot of people post in Teams, and I could go and search for that content, which can be a challenge sometimes. They're getting better with the search. It used to not be nearly as good. When I do a search now, I can tell it to only search messages to or from that particular person in that particular time period, and it only chat, not Teams posts as well. But let's say that there's something really important. I can go and save the message. When I do that, any message that I've saved, I can go reference here. So if there's something really important I want to get back to later, I don't have time then, I could bookmark it and come back to it. So it makes it a lot easier instead of always having to rely on that search for the same thing over and over again. Every channel also has an email address. All you have to do is click the little 3 dots, get email address, copy it and paste it. So one thing we found helpful with this is anytime we send an email to all employees, at Center, we actually have a team called All Employees with a general channel there, and we BCC that so that not only do people get the email to all employees, but they also will get a post on Teams. They might see that faster than email. So that's also very helpful. We've used that for RSS feeds. You know, we are a service provider. We deal with a lot of different cloud environments, a lot of SaaS applications. We want to know when some of them widely used ones go down. So when our clients start calling in, we can go look, and we have a bunch of RSS feeds that are updating the Teams channels, letting us know that there's an outage. So pretty helpful that you can use it that way. You can also do external chat if that person you're corresponding with, if their IT environment or Teams environment allows it. So this is my demo environment. The easiest way to do that, this part, I think they don't make it very easy for people to find on their own. But if you just start typing in the email address of that person, you can tell it, I've already searched for myself. So let's say jschuler@centertechnologies.com. You can tell it to search that person externally, because what it's going to do is look internally at your address book. If that person doesn't exist, it's going to stop there. You got to tell it to search externally. It will then go find that person, and then you can start messaging them. Again, they have to allow it.
This can be such a helpful tool, but can also get out of hand. Maybe external communication over Teams isn't the right thing for your department or business. But we recently went through an acquisition, and we needed some immediate communications. Like we needed to establish links to be able to talk to people and bring everyone into one team. This was an excellent way to talk to someone who's external in the eyes of Microsoft, even though the acquisition had formally taken place, right? So there are some really good use cases, I would imagine, for external communications outside of that, maybe frequent vendors that you work with. But yeah, I think this is the type of thing that can also get really out of hand really quick.
It can. So at Center, we've locked it down to where only specific external organizations do we allow that access. And Microsoft is improving in this area. When you're working with, again, whether it's acquisition or child companies, sister companies, partners, and early on, it was very challenging. Chat with external people. Now they've added that capability. But one thing you can't do still is, let's say you have this existing chat and I want to add someone external. You can't do that to an existing chat. So one important thing to note, you have to create a new one when you're trying to do a group chat with external. So, but it is always getting better. You can invite guests to your team's environment if you have the permission set up on the back end, so that you can add them to the team and do collaboration if you needed to. Let's see, the calendar, a live look at your calendar. It's going to be the same as Outlook. You can create a new meeting, meet now. If let's say you're trying to join a meeting, the link isn't working, you can join with the ID. You can book a scheduled meeting, webinar, live event. There's a lot you can do with this. And what's helpful is if it's on my calendar and it's a Teams meeting, I can click it and quickly join that meeting, and it'll notify everyone else in Teams that that meeting has started or that person has joined it to kick off the meeting. And then there's also, go ahead.
We're getting pretty short on time. You might pick your last favorite thing to discuss, and then anyone who has a question, you might want to type that in or get that in now, so that if we have that extra minute, Todd can address it. Well, Todd, you're pulling that last one up.
Yep. So some of these are going to be challenging in a demo environment, but meeting recaps, if you do the meeting within Teams, you have it set up, you'll get a recap that's a recording, a transcript of the meeting, notes that someone took, any documents that were shared will show up there as well. That's also very helpful if you miss a meeting to go back and see it. Together mode is cool. Instead of a little Brady Bunch view, it allows you to do a together mode and make it look like you're in an actual conference room. And then virtual whiteboard is another favorite of mine, especially if you have a Surface device where you can easily draw on it. You can share that whiteboard and have other people writing and posting at the exact same time. Very helpful for collaboration. One other new feature that's silly is you can chat with yourself. I didn't realize I missed this. Slack had it, but there's times where you have on your mobile device and you want to quickly send yourself a link. Well, iPhone and Windows don't work very well together. I could copy a link to a website or something. Instead of emailing myself, I could send myself a note, and that way I can access it from multiple devices very quickly. So nice. One thing that's helpful, I use that a lot going from mobile to Windows.
Yeah, I like it when I can leave a meeting from my desk and just put it in my ear from my cell phone and continue my movement to the car or wherever I need to go. There were a couple of questions that popped in there. I think Taylor might be addressing those at least the one for Belinda. Clay also asked, or I guess he commented, that it's handy to change the title of a chat window and calling people in for troubleshooting an issue. We couldn't agree more, Clay. That's a great use case.
Yeah, when it says the title, everybody kind of says, "Oh, yeah, I need to get on this."
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And then one thing that's also cool in that group chat, you could click call. Let's say it's something pressing. It's an emergency outage. You can click call and it'll actually dial every single person that's in that group chat very quickly. You can get them all on the phone really quickly. We've used that quite a bit. Yeah,
we do. That's a good one. Todd, I can't thank you enough for doing this with us. Appreciate you spending some time in your day to show everybody some of your best practices. That was a lot of information, guys. For those who were here listening today, if you have additional questions or go back and review the video and something new comes up, reach out, let us know. We're happy to sit down and show you some other tips and tricks. But yeah, we won't know what you don't know until you tell us. So feel free to get back in touch with us about Teams. And tomorrow we'll be doing this for SharePoint, which is a behemoth of a product. So hopefully we can get that done in 30 minutes as well. Until then, guys, we'll have a great day and we'll see you tomorrow.